boys in the forest. 9 little hikers about to meet the demise. All of Harlem hiking.
This is a story you may have no doubt heard countless times already, but allow us to tell it one last time. The sun was beginning to set over the western rise as the two men crested the hill. A combination of exhaustion and the biting cold of the late Russian winter had slowed their progress to a crawl, but it had not dampened their determination. They plodded on through the deep snow with only one thing on their minds. They were out searching for their friends who had failed to return from a hiking trip 2 weeks prior. The dying light meant that they would soon have to call it a day. They did not relish the prospect of finding their way back to camp in the dark, especially through such unforgiving terrain. But despite those dangers, they could not help but appreciate the allure of their surroundings. This wilderness had a calming, almost serene beauty, and they could only hope that it had been kind to their friends. Although their hearts remained resolute, after so many days searching, that hope was fading as quickly as the setting sun. Ahead of them were the rising slopes of Kholat Syakhl, translated from the Mansi word meaning dead mountain, so named by the local Mansi tribes due to the fact that nothing ever grows there.
I can recall even as I lay dying in the snow. The very first time I heard the voice that led us to our demise. I still hear it even now as I write this down, be convinced that led my friends and myself to our death. I must write down what happened to us. I must let the world know. I started to feel this pull upon me, making me to drift off into eternal sleep. The voice came to me upon the first night we set a camp. The exact hour I do not know. We were all on a walk in our camp. I awoke to the sound of the unrelentless wind. It was howling so loud, the voice was in the wind, as quiet as a whisper mixed in. I can recall hearing laughter at first, then heard it calling my name. It began to tell me things of the haunting memories of the war, things I only knew, the cruelty of my deeds, and knew of the bloodshed, the blood of all the countless bodies written amongst the ground like leaves in the fall. The voice somehow the voice knew these memories that I held in the deepest, darkest parts of my mind, locked away that even God couldn't find. Yet the voice knew as soon as the voice appeared, it quickly ceased driving out from the howling wind.
For this reason, the vision that greeted the two men in that late afternoon was an immense, perfectly smooth hillock, blanketed with pure white snow. And they would have turned back at that point, if not for the fact that something had caught their attention. In the midst of all that brilliant white, they could make out a singular dark spot about halfway up the side of the mountain, sticking out like a sore thumb, completely at odds with its surroundings. It would take them another half an hour to reach, but as they got closer, they could make out the vague outline of a large tent. They knew immediately that it belonged to their missing friends, and upon inspection, they found that besides a large hole in the side canvas, everything else was in order. The sides of the tent had been insulated with coats and empty backpacks. Ski boots were lined up neatly near the entrance. Padded coats and blankets lined the floor, and elsewhere, a They found personal items stowed away and a wood axe and saw at the far end of the roughly 8 square metre shelter. The two rescuers breathed a sigh of relief as they noticed that there were no bodies. They cautiously celebrated as they permitted themselves to believe that their comrades were not dead, but they could not shake the feeling that something about the scene before them still seemed a little odd. They did not know it at the time, but this was only the beginning of an enduring mystery, one which remains unresolved to this day. A mystery that would go on to become one of the most famous and strangest cases, not just in Russia, but in the history of the entire world.
I recall the following morning, thinking the voice was a dream. Then I noticed my fellow comrades, my friends, were visibly spooked. Little did I know they all heard the voice within the wind. I remember all the way to keep a straight face, despite the events of last night that took place. We packed up our gear and headed out deeper into the frozen forest. Everything was covered in ice. When howling so cold, niggas like pushing on. Getting temperature was dropping faster than any of us had expected. Out here we as the light of the sun disappeared over the horizon, we lay camp in the beginning in the tent before darkness sets in. We sat in the tent and told stories, all except for me. I remained quiet, listening to the wind, expecting to hear the voice again, wondering if they heard it the night before as well. The storyteller of the group was telling a story of the snow rage stance of a living in the area, and how the locals say they can cause hysteria and people trespass upon their domain. Stories of how people who pass by the dead mountain go insane. I close my eyes, shifting on to the sound of the story. I dream of the war of the lives that have been torn, the amount of gore. I dream of the atrocities I committed on this distant kernel. The women and children being raped and had me execute them. They keep his secrets. Oh God, I'm going to hell for the things I've done.
9 students of the Ural Polytechnical Institute in Sverdlovsk and an older, ex-military companion set out to hike across the Siberian wilderness. There were 10 group members in total, and they were all experienced hikers, each being rated at grade 2 in their capability by the Institute itself. Their aim was to reach Kholat Mountain in the northern Urals, a trek which would take them over nearly 300 miles of terrain in the midst of harsh Russian winter. They were led by Igor Dyatlov, an accomplished radio engineer and a natural-born leader, respected by many of his peers. Everyone aspired to take part in one of his hikes, and it was considered a high honor to do so. Not once did the thought ever cross their minds that this would be their last trip, one that would ultimately end in disaster. Their arduous over the next few days play out, they would begin finding the bodies of their friends.
We all were awoken sometime during the night to the sounds of howling, the sounds of trees snapping and crashing down all around us. The ground was shaking underneath the tent. We all looked at one another, visibly frightened, especially the women. We could hear a low, deep groan circling the tent, the sounds and fear down our spines. But whatever was inside was large. The steps it took, the lantern above our head shook. Suddenly, all was silent, even the wind. It was so quiet, we could hear our hearts beating rapidly within our chests. None of us slept for the rest of the night. The following morning, when it was daylight, we emerged from the tent. The first thing we saw were the footprints all around the tent. They looked like large canines, but they were from a dog claws, which was unlike any wolf, no demand to exist. Next was the trees, all the trees in a 50-yard radius around the tent were snapped and broken, riddled with claw marks. Oh, we all discussed heading back to leave and abandoning our trip. I remember having looked at the map, and we all came to the conclusion we had to keep heading on around the mountain. It was shorter than turning back. Looking back now, I was foolish to convince them to continue on. How could I possibly have known more of what I know now? As I lay here, dying in the snow, I must finish writing down what happened to us. For when the people find our boats and bodies, they will find this leather, and they will know, the world will know of the voice.
It was on the 29th of January that the group's hiking adventure would commence proper. After having travelled mostly by road and rail, it was now time for the hard work to begin, as they made the rest of their way towards Ural Mountain on foot. They continued skiing north along the frozen Lovsa River into the late evening before setting up camp for the night. On the 30th, they would head west following the Ural River, one of the Lovsa's tributaries, all the way up to the base of an unnamed mountain, marked on maps simply as height 1079. In the years that followed, this peak would come to be officially recognised by its fancy name of Kholat Syakhl, the Dead Mountain. It was here that they would set up camp and build a cache to store any excess supplies in an effort to lighten their loads. This was in preparation for the ascent of Ural. The 1st of February would see progress slow to a crawl as the harsh weather began to set in. The low visibility would contribute to the group straying off course, and in the last hours of daylight, they would find themselves halfway up the slopes of height 1079. But whatever took place over the next few hours is highly mysterious, and would go on to become what is now known as the Dyatlov Pass incident. Nobody knows for sure exactly what happened, but from collected evidence, authorities were able to ascertain that at some point during the night of the 1st of February, something spooked the hikers so much that they would cut their way out of the tent and run out into the freezing cold night, barefooted, and in little more than their underwear. All 9 group members perished, most of them from hypothermia, but some from horrific injuries, of which nobody has ever been able to satisfactorily explain.
I recall the third night we set up camp. We were all still frightened from the night before, starting bottom heavily. The wind howling with a ferocious intensity. Our leader was the person keeping guard, telling me that he was asleep before our shift. 3 hours into my sleep, the voice came again. I awoke to hear it briefly kick. It was in the tent with us as my eyes adjusted to the light of the lantern. I said I saw you glowing. On the opposite side of the tent, glowing right within that low light. They instantly in my heart was bright. I was paralyzed with fear. A smile appeared under the eyes, and it was chaotically saying my name, giggling as it spoke. The eyes seemed to shine with happiness that I was awake. I recall thinking that this was a dream, but I knew I was awake. The voice behind those eyes kept giggling and spoke to me. The eyes moving towards me, telling me to follow it. The lantern didn't clearly, but the eyes still were shining bright. I found myself in a trance and barely clothed. I left the tent, following the eyes outside of the tent. I found myself walking into the darkness, following the eyes, ignoring the freezing pain of the snow burning my bare feet. Suddenly the eyes disappeared and I found myself alone in the blackness of the night. It was full dark, no stars. I recall the feeling of panicking and the feeling lost. The camp was nowhere to be found.
The entire event is still steeped in mystery, even after all this time. The rescuers made camp in a more optimistic mood than they had started out with. They firmly believed that the group were out there somewhere, alive and braving the cold in a snow cave or abandoned house. They couldn't have known that the bodies of their friends were lying beneath the snow, lifeless and silent, not too far from their own camp. The next day, on the 27th of February, the full horror of the Dyatlov Pass incident would begin to unfold. The next morning, the search and rescue party made an early start, keen to determine the group's direction of travel away from their abandoned tent. They were soon joined by a large group of volunteers. Leading away from the campsite, the rescuers discovered at least 8 sets of footprints, possibly 9, heading down the slope towards the edge of a wood at the very base of the mountain. Bizarrely, most of the tracks looked as if they had been made by people wearing only socks, and even barefooted in some cases. They disappeared after about 500 meters, apparently covered by snowfall. At the edge of the tree line, underneath a large cedar tree, they found the remnants of a small fire. They also noticed that the cedar tree's branches had been broken or snapped off completely up to 5 meters above the ground, suggesting that someone had climbed it. This at first looked promising, but any hopes of finding the hikers alive would be short-lived.
I began to shout, hoping my friends would hear me, but no sound came out. Then I realized I was surrounded by the eyes shining right within the darkness. Then I could hear the sound of the children tapping, saying some name. Then a light shined right above me, driving me to the point where I had to close my eyes. When I opened them, I found myself in uniform, walking down a hallway till I reached the door. On the other side, I could hear a little girl screaming and singing. Door open to reveal a haunting memory. I can see my commander brutally raping a 12-year-old German girl, which she did often in the Russian campaign. In the taking of Berlin, the colonel was just finishing. The little girl lay upon the kitchen table. In her home, her mother and father both shot dead. In the corner of the room, the spark of a child's light lasting in her eyes. They dead look in her eyes, even though she was alive. The colonel gave me the order. A pistol suddenly appeared in my hand, and despite everything in me screaming to stop, I put the gun to her head and pulled the trigger twice. I saw half her head and brain at a straighted table. How she seemed more happy now. I closed my eyes to the horrors. When I opened them, I found myself back in the frozen forest, back in the darkness. I screamed for my friends, only hearing my echo as a reply. Then I hear the children's voices behind me. I turned to see the children, the victims of the colonel. Creighton had me execute. They circled me, all holding hands, singing your name. All had flowers in their hair.
Early on the morning of the 27th of February, they found the body of Yuri Doroshenko underneath the cedar tree, close to where the fire pit was situated. At 180 centimeters tall, Doroshenko was the group's tallest and most well-built member. He was described as impulsive and brave by those who knew him. On a previous expedition, he had apparently chased away a bear that had wandered too close to camp. Doroshenko had minor cuts and bruises all over his body. His nose, lips, and one of his ears were covered in dried blood. His upper lip was swollen, as if he had been hit in the mouth. A grey foam-like substance was also found on his cheeks, suggesting he had suffered from a pulmonary edema. His right temple and one of his feet had been burned. Despite all of these signs, the cause of death was listed as hypothermia.
I suddenly felt something hug my waist. I looked down to see the little girl. She was looking at me with the same eyes I saw that day. The loss of the will to live, a dead lifeless eyes. Her hair, blonde hair, was stained red, caked in drying blood. She had blood coming from her mouth, even as she started to speak to me. The rest of the children were all hugging me. All were saying the voices they were singing how they're waiting on me, waiting for the voice to take me to its world, singing how the voice had plans for me. I closed my eyes and began to scream. I suddenly felt my face being slapped. I opened my eyes to see a leader staring at me. I looked around and found myself in the tent. I recall thinking what I just experienced was nothing more than a nightmare. That wasn't until a leader told me. He found me outside the tent, naked, half frozen, repeatedly singing and He asked me whose name was I saying, and why did I need the safety of the tent. I recall telling him I didn't know, that I couldn't remember which was a lie. The name that belonged to the voice was still echoing in my head. I thanked him for saving me and told him I was having a nightmare of the one I must have slept for. I stayed awake for the rest of the night, thinking of the name that the children spoke of, thinking of what they told me when the sun rose that morning. I couldn't have been happier. Little did I know that today was our last day. We would be alive, that by tomorrow morning we would all be dead, that the coming night would be our last.
Yuri Krivonischenko's body was found lying right next to Doroshenko, and was discovered at roughly the same time. Krivonischenko had been the group's joker and musician, and had something of a reputation for being a master storyteller. He had been studying construction and hydraulics at the university. As with Doroshenko, minor bruises and abrasions were found on his abdomen and various limbs. The tip of his nose was missing, possibly eaten by animals after death. A chunk of flesh had been torn off the knuckle on the back of his left hand, which was later found to be in his mouth, suggesting that he had bitten himself, possibly as a way of staying awake, or if he had been hiding in order to stifle a cry. Both of his hands had suffered burns. The cause of death was also listed as hypothermia. The next body to be discovered was that of Igor Dyatlov, the group's leader. Highly intelligent and meticulous in preparation, Igor was well respected amongst his peers. His knowledge of radio systems was said to be encyclopedic, having crafted a number of wireless devices using household items. His body was found later the same day, further up the slope, 300 meters from the cedar tree, as if he had died whilst heading back towards the tent. He was found face up and covered with snow. Both his hands were clasped together in front of him, with his arms tight against his chest. His watch had stopped at 5:31 a.m. Like the others, he had minor abrasions and bruises. Blood was found on his lips, and his lower jaw was missing an incisor. The coroner reported that injuries to his hands were consistent with those which occurred during a fist fight. As with the other two bodies, Dyatlov had also died from exposure.
That morning we all looked exhausted as we packed up our gear and started on our journey again. Hours into the trek through the frozen forest, we soon realized we were at the base of the dead mountain. Somehow we'd gotten off course. Our leader was visibly frustrated and pulled out a map. We were flicked 3 clicks west of our intended route, which could with night that's approaching. We were forced to set up camp. We were all in the tent as the last bit of light faded over the horizon. The events of last night were still fresh on my mind. The name of the voice still echoing in my ears. Dark glowing eyes and smile like you see. Every time I close my eyes, I can still see those glowing eyes bright, even in the darkness of my mind. Like they were etched into my brain, like the voice wanted me to feel insane. As I was in deep thoughts, the storyteller was telling the group about his last expedition. The others were laughing at his tales. All was cheerful, all was calm. Little did we all know we were about to die that night. I awoke up at midnight to see our leader and the others in a panic. I remember saying to the leader what was wrong. They saw shush me. Our leader cut a large hole in the side of the tent, pointing a flashlight out into the darkness. I crawled up to him and whispered into his ear, "What's going on?" He replied, "There's something here circling us." I stared out into the darkness, frozen wilderness, seeing nothing, hearing nothing but the howling wind. Suddenly the females of our group started to scream and howl hysterically. Then they began to claw out their eyes with their nails, blood gushing down their face, their face, their face, their face.
The last hiker to be found that day was Zinaida Kolmogorova. Zinaida, or Zina, was regarded as lively and bright by her friends. She had a natural warmth, and her outgoing personality was very welcoming. She was highly attractive, and many of her male companions privately admitted to having had a crush on her. Her body was discovered face down, 630 meters away from the cedar tree. Like Dyatlov, it seemed that she had died while struggling to make her way back to the tent. She had also apparently died from hypothermia, but her body was in a similar state to the others, with minor cuts and bruises. However, she had a fresh, foot-long bruise in her lower right lumbar region. Rustem Slobodan's body was not discovered until the 5th of March. Slobodan was the group's second musician, and he always carried a mandolin with him on every single hike. He was the son of affluent university professors, and he had already earned a degree in mechanical engineering. Rustem was found face down, 480 meters from the cedar tree, somewhere between Igor and Zina. Like them, he also appeared to have been trying to make his way back to camp. He was one of the few hikers to be found wearing footwear, although he had on only one felt boot on his right foot. Like the others, he had minor wounds all over his body, but somewhere along the line, he had fractured his skull. Despite such an appalling injury, it was not serious enough to have caused his death. Slobodan also died from exposure. Dyatlov, Doroshenko and Krivonischenko had all been lightly dressed. Their bodies were found wearing little more than their underwear. Kolmogorova, and particularly Slobodan, on the other hand, were better dressed than the other three, although the clothing they had on was nowhere near sufficient enough to withstand such low temperatures. With the exception of Dyatlov, it was discovered that the other bodies had been moved in some way after death. Most were found face down, even though they had died on their backs.
Women were frozen in horror as they shoved past us and ran out the hole of the tent in their underwear, running out into the frozen darkness. We watched as the last female rushed out. Our leader went to grab her. She instantly spun around, punching him hard in the nose, breaking it instantly. She slipped away, following the other women Into the dark we could hear their screams and howls echoing amongst the wind. We stared at each other in shock and awe. Suddenly everyone except me and our leader started to scream and began clawing their flesh, punching themselves. With our leader tries to stop and restrain them, but they overpower him and begin beating him. I lunged onto one of our comrades, shoving hard off our leader. They looked at me, blood pouring from their wounds. They howled and rushed out the hole into the darkness, following the wind. And all that was left were me and our leader, who seemed unconscious at the moment. I stared out into the darkness, hear the others howling, hearing them screaming, echoing in the darkness of the frozen land. Our leader came to, looking at me, asking me with a confused tone, what the fuck just happened? What the fuck's possessed them to do that to me? To let themselves to run out into the frozen dark. I replied, but the boys must have possessed them. He replied with, what fucking boys? What are you talking about? That's when I told our leader everything I've been experiencing, that this is something toying with us. Something has chosen us for its game, and that it must have decided to put its plan into motion. Whatever it is had to possess the others.
The bodies of the last 4 hikers were not discovered until 2 months later, when the snows began to melt. A mountain native by the name of Kholat noticed cut branches forming a trail, which receded 75 meters further back into the woods behind the cedar tree. This led to a 6-meter deep ravine, where a pair of black cotton pants were found. The ravine was still half filled with snow, but on the 5th of May, rescuers worked tirelessly to dig it out. The remaining 4 bodies were located inside, buried under 4 meters of snowfall. All of them were better dressed than the previous victims. It was later discovered that only one of them had died from hypothermia, and it was assumed that these 4 had taken clothes from the other dead bodies found near the cedar tree. Along with the hikers, they also found a hastily constructed den, which suggested that they had survived for some time whilst in the ravine. Alexander Kholat was a student of nuclear physics, a methodical young man with an imposing physique. He was a very private person and enjoyed smoking a pipe. Kholat was the only person found in the ravine who had apparently died of hypothermia. Despite this, he had a broken nose, a deformed neck, and was missing his eyes and the soft tissues around them. There was also a fairly large open wound behind his left ear, and portions of his clothing were found to be slightly radioactive. Rescuers found Alexander Zolotaryov's body right next to Kholatov's. They were embraced back to breast. At 37, Zolotaryov was the oldest and most experienced member of the group. He had seen military action on the Russian front during World War II, and was something of a stranger to his companions. Nobody really knew him. He had joined the hike at the last minute, but the others had warmed to his personable nature rather quickly. He had already achieved his Grade 3 certification in hiking, and they respected his expertise. His birthday was on February 2nd, and it is a particularly sad twist that he either died on or just before his 38th birthday. Zolotaryov had not died from hypothermia, but from a crushing injury to his chest. All bones in the top half of his right ribcage had been fractured. He had a large open wound on the right side of his head, a cut so deep that the skull bone had been exposed. He was also missing his eyes and eyelids. He was found with a pen in his right hand and a piece of paper in his left. Nikolai Thibu Brigneles was found just 2 meters away from the other 2. Brigneles had already graduated from the university, earning his degree in industrial civil construction. Though serious and extremely well-read, he was the most humorous member of the group. Brigneles had died from a massive impact to the skull, with multiple fractures to the temporal bone. This sort of injury would have left him unable to move. It should be noted that Zolotaryov and Brignoles were the best dressed members of the group. Both were found wearing footwear, which has led many to believe that they might have been outside of the tent at the time the incident took place. Finally, Lyudmila Dubinina's body was discovered only a metre away from the other three. Lyudmila was the youngest member of the party. She had a reputation as an outspoken and highly principled student, and although serious on the surface, she had a razor-sharp wit, which often kept her companions in high spirits. Unfortunately, of all the group members, her body was found in the worst state. Like Zolotaryov, she had also suffered a crushing injury to her chest. All but 8 of her ribs had been broken. Her eyes, tongue, and the soft tissues around her mouth and eyelids were missing. The coroner found a significant amount of blood in her stomach, which suggested her tongue could have been removed while she was still alive. Animal predation shortly after death was also listed as a possibility. On top of all this, her clothes were found to be radioactive. It should be noted that small amounts of radiation were also detected in and around the area of Dyatlov Pass. The injuries to Dubinina, Zolotaryov and Brignoles were of particular interest. The coroner reported that they did not exhibit the blunt force trauma associated with any kind of attack using melee weapons. Instead, they were the sort of injuries only seen in car accidents or explosions. They were inflicted at speed and caused by a huge amount of pressure. Needless to say, authorities were initially baffled. They could have accepted 1 or 2 hikers having lost their lives, but the deaths of 9 highly experienced individuals seemed incomprehensible. The campsite was examined and re-examined countless times, and from the evidence gathered, investigators were able to piece together a rough idea of what happened.
Whatever it is had to possess the others, and God's them to do what they just did. We have to save them. Our leaders stand up and fly with this is so fucked. They're going to die of hypothermia if we don't hurry. We started to dress and I heard giggling like the sound of a child, of a little girl. Suddenly I looked to our leader and he was gone. I was alone in the tent, all alone in the darkness, alone with unknowns. I tried to hurry up and get dressed, only to manage to get a shirt, overcoat, pants, and one boot on, when the children started calling my name, beckoning me out of the tent. I tried to ignore their call, but I gave in and crawled out of the hole, out into the darkness of the frozen forest. I walked towards the tree line at the base of the dead mountain, seeing these on fire, burning, believing it to be a trick of the mind, but I realized it was real. I approached the fire to see 2 of my comrades huddled up to the flames. It was one of the men and the other men. Both were holding each other. I spoke their names. They looked right at me and started to scream, stay away, stay away. Compies, I still approached them when suddenly the man lunged at me. I managed to backwalk. His coming blow came up with an uppercut, knocking him down. He immediately lunged again, grabbing my waist, walking me down into the snow. We tussled for a minute until I managed to get on top of him and began punching him with everything I had. I soon realized when I stopped, I nearly beaten him to death. The woman sat there giggling, saying the big bad killer soldier had still together.
Forensic examination of the fibres in the tent material determined that the cuts had been made from the inside. The zip on the main entrance was still locked in place, suggesting that none of the group had left the tent in this way. They had all exited through the large hole in the side canvas. Many of their belongings were left behind, things that would have otherwise saved their lives, including layers of protective clothing. Footprints leading away from the tent indicated a haphazard and panicked flight. The tracks initially diverged on different routes of escape, but regrouped about 100 meters further down the slope. It was determined at this point that the hikers were no longer running, but taking calm, methodical steps. They walked almost in single file. Upon reaching the tree line at the bottom of the slope, it is assumed that Doroshenko and Krivonishenko, the least well-dressed, quickly began to suffer from hypothermia. They all huddled around a hastily lit fire in order to keep themselves warm, but it was most likely not sufficient enough. They could not see the tent from their position, and it is assumed that somebody climbed the large cedar tree in order to survey the scene and see if it was safe to return. Investigators believe that 3 members of the group, freezing and already in the initial stages of hypothermia, decided to brave the elements and make their way back to the tent. The remaining 4 members stayed behind to look after Doroshenko and Krivonishenko, hoping the other 3 would return with provisions. Little did they know it, but Dyatlov, Slobodan and Kolmogorova would expire at various stages of their ascent. After the deaths of Doroshenko and Krivonishenko, and with still no sign of the other 3, the remaining 4 members decided to head into the woods for better protection from the weather. Stumbling through the darkness, 3 of them fell from a height of 6 meters into the ravine and suffered appalling injuries. An alternative to this theory is that they all made it to the bottom of the ravine, but were crushed under a massive collapse of ice and snow from above. All members of the group now lay dead or dying.
She sat there giggling, saying I was the place's favorite, that the rest of us were just its toys, that I am the real prize of a voice. I walked past her, leaving her behind, screaming, hysterically howling in May. She said the name Koo-Jow, 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 Koo-Jow. Leaving her behind with the screaming, suddenly stopped. I could hear something beating her, her grunting, something hitting her. What the fuck is going on? Oh my god, this is just a nightmare. I recall telling myself, I looked up beyond me. I was lost out, but was surprised that I couldn't feel the cold. It felt like a normal summer's night, not below 0, with the snow and wind falling heavily over me, the hero. I walked following to the forest, hoping to find someone alive, someone sane, when suddenly I was hit in the ribs hard, knocking my breath away. I fell to my knees to feel the blow against my back, knocking me down flat. I looked up to see it was our leader, his eyes shining bright, even in the dark. He screamed, think you can kill me? You won't kill me, whatever the fuck you are. My leader raised a log high above his head, screaming. I managed to kick out his leg, causing him to fall to his hands and knees. He still swung the log, barely missing my head. I lunged and tackled him into the snow, screaming it was me. He stopped struggling and looked at me and began to cry, saying they all tried to kill me. I had to kill him instead. The woman I had a crush on tried to bite my throat out. I had to beat her to death, and I said, it's okay, well, it's okay, it's okay. I had to do the same now, come on, we have to get back to the tent. He started sobbing more, I sucked him hard against his face, shouting to get a hold of yourself. Whatever is doing this wants us like this, to cause her death. We have to survive, we must survive. Our leader stood up and told me to go on. He wasn't going back, and he took off into the dark, screaming the name Cujo, screaming for this Cujo to take him on. I sat there listening to our leader screaming for this Cujo to come for him, when he lets out a blood curdling scream and howl, and everything goes silent. I sat there in the silence, looking up to the sky, seeing not a single star was shining bright. Complete blackness was my world. I got up and continued on, looking for the way back to the tent. I must abide, I must live in order for the world to know what happened. I mustn't let this creature get away with this. For my fallen comrades, I will live to tell the tale. I walked on till I came to a ravine and heard crying, and someone soothing the one crying. I approached carefully till someone shouted out, "Who's there?" I replied with my name and could hear them saying, "Oh, thank God," and followed by with "Help us." I crawled into the ravine to find 3 of my comrades nearly frozen to death, looking at me as if I could honestly save them by this point of time. I remember saying it's gonna be okay when a hard blow hit me in the back of the head, knocking me down and into the ravine on top of our comrades. I looked up to see our leader smiling a joker smile, and his eyes were those of the eyes of the entity, the eyes of the voice, this thing they call Cujo. Our leader crawled down and began to beat the others to death. I could hear them screaming, gurgling, and the sound of them being beaten. Our leader was laughing and he turned to me, his face changed into the eye of Colonel, changing into the faces of the children of the war. Before it spoke, it was the voice of something ancient but young. It spoke as a gesture would speak. It said my name and told me this was the end of my journey, to lay here frozen in the snow, that it would take me to each realm, that I could have immortality if I accept this offer. I replied with, "Go fuck yourself." It replied with, "You're the one who's fucked." Suddenly I could feel the frozen temperature on my flesh. It was so cold I could barely breathe. It grabbed a hold of my throat and asked me one more time that if I refused, all my comrades would come with it, and our story would forever be a mystery, even though we were even remembered in history. But our story would never be told. I spit in the face and it laughed and let me go, and suddenly disappeared. I reached into my pocket, found this little piece of paper and a pen. I could feel hypothermia setting in. I wrote these events to prove this creature wrong, that I would, despite dying, I would win. I wrote the words for the world to know. I feel sleep beckoning me as I write down the final words of our story.
As the snow and wind howled across the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, some event must have taken place at the campsite, which disturbed them so much so that they prioritized fleeing the scene over the structural integrity of their only shelter and of protecting themselves against the sub-zero temperatures. And this is the crux of the entire mystery. What was that event? A photo taken by Brignoles on the 30th of January, the now infamous frame number 17, depicts what many believe to be a Sasquatch or Yeti stalking the group. The local Mansi tribes in particular tell many legends about such creatures, and absolutely believe that they inhabit the Siberian wilderness. The hikers also wrote a small article about the Yeti in their mock newspaper. This has led some people to put forward the possibility that the group were either spooked by one of these beings coming too close to camp, or were indeed attacked by one or or even several for encroaching upon their habitat. After all these years, we are still no closer to understanding what kind of event could drive so many people to act so recklessly, and unfortunately, we may never know the truth. It seems the secrets of Dyatlov Pass died on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, along with the young men and women who undertook such a difficult assignment. Whatever happened, it was such a tragic waste of life. Truly, our hearts are with their loved ones, and these vibrant and talented individuals should never be forgotten. If we are to have any hope of solving this case, we should never stray from the curiosity we all feel regarding their final moments. The sounds of their toil, laughter, and even of their horror will forever echo through the lonely mountain pass where they spent their final days. May their brave souls live on forever.